Hey there, welcome back to the table. Sorry it's been a couple of days, just a lot of family stuff and personal things going on, but I do have some time tonight to get some more turns in, and let's talk about a couple of feedback points. The first one, so with the Russians, as you know, we've been using these dummies, and I started the game with 3 dummies on the map. Just a quick reminder, dummies aren't supposed to be used if you're playing solitaire or if you're playing both sides solitaire. So we're sort of doing this just to see how a 2-player game would play. And I apologize because I keep screwing it up. The rulebook does say, and thank you for pointing it out, the dummies get generated during the admin phase, and it's 1 dummy per token. So as you can see there's 1 Russian plane there that is detected. So he can't generate a dummy. He can only generate it if he's undetected. And if he was able to generate a dummy, it would be 1 and only 1 dummy. So you don't put 2 of them out. Just because the scenario allows you to have 2 dummies doesn't mean that they both come out all at once. So that was the part I misunderstood. I viewed them like as soon as I go undetected, I can put 2 out. That's not how this works. The other part of it is that a dummy can also generate a dummy as long as it's undetected. And by definition, a dummy is undetected because the moment you detect them, they go away. So if a dummy were to somehow survive the round and make it to the admin phase, then yes, you could generate a dummy from the dummy. But none of that's the case here. The other thing to point out is that this is only a 15-turn scenario, and we've done 2 turns, and the Russian plane hasn't even made it to the front line yet. So somebody recommended that since he has 12 fuel, maybe he needs to do some dashing and burn a little bit of that fuel and get some movement points under him, because he's going to need all of his turns to get through and do his objective, and then he has to get out of dodge. That's just me not having experience with the game, but that's an excellent point. I've also been hugging the deck, which I think is the right way to do this. He does have TFR, so when he hits those mountains, he'll be fine. Americans, not so much. But anyways, let's go ahead and get going. I think that was it with the feedback. I can't think of too much else. I don't have my overhead camera today, so we're just going to make do with what we have here. And other than me reaching all the way across the table, this is really more of an inconvenience for me than anything, but I hope you don't mind either. So getting out the rule book or the sheet here, first thing we do is random event. So I'm going to bring the camera back and let's roll for random event. And I got hold on a second. We have a camera issue. 1 second. Okay, it was not a camera issue. It was the map had moved. The good news is like this particular scenario, you don't even need this paper map, because these are actually 2 sheets of paper here. I really do got to open up my table and get this under the plexiglass. Okay, so I rolled a 7. I may have rolled before, but I was so distracted by this problem that I couldn't even remember if I rolled, so apologies there. And a 7 is a man-pad ambush. That sounds like a women's lib thing. So we roll 1d10 again, and then the player is going to select an enemy flight that is deck low and on the hostile side of the front for a man-pad ambush. Make a heavy AAA. Well, nobody's on the hostile side of the front, so we'll just skip that. So let's move on to the next step, which is the jamming phase, which we skip. Detection phase. So the Russians are already detected. The American is not. So we're going to go ahead and roll to see if they detect the American. And that's a 14. So the answer is yes. They do detect the American. So I'm just reaching over and turning it over. There's really no big deal there. They detected Detected Americans on the American side of the front. Woo! Okay. Then we do the movement phase. So this is where we roll for initiative. I rolled a 2, which means NATO gets the initiative. So NATO's going to force the Russians to draw first. And remember last time they drew a 0, which backfired. But we're going to make the Russians draw first again. And the Russians drew a 1 this time. So they will go. And just a quick refresher. They are at the deck. So we're going to do this, which makes them move 5 instead of 4. And just a question for those of you who've been helping me. I know that this means maneuver, but like I went to like, okay, when does this number get used? And I looked in combat and there's a maneuver table that doesn't even use these numbers. So I'm very confused on when, like I know these are maneuver numbers, but I don't know like when do those numbers get used? And is it as simple as like you use them to remove tokens, or like I can't find it in the rule book, and even in the index I look at the maneuver rating and it still doesn't tell me. So it's a bit nebulous for me on what that maneuver number, like how is it used practically? Like where in the rule book, like what section or something can I look at to learn more about what those numbers do? But anyways, it's going to cost us a fuel, but we have 12. And we're going to move 5 spaces instead of 4. Okay. So we're going to come up. Let's zoom in. And if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, and we're going to turn, let's see, what would that be? That'd be a 30-degree turn, which I think is well within his allowed amount. Or if you dash, you may not be able to turn. Give me a second. Let's find that. Yeah, so we move 5 at the deck level. So yeah, we can do a 30-degree turn when we do that. And yeah, there we are. So we're right over the front line and right near the rally point that we set for ourselves. And we're 2 spaces. My dog is going bonkers. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're near the rally point. We need to get to the other rally point. We're intentionally 2 spaces away from the ground units. Those ground units would detect visually. You know, if you're within 1 space of them, I'd have to like make sure, is it 1 space or 0? But anyways, we're out of the range of the visual detection. But they are over the front and they're detected. So I think that means we can finally do something as the Americans. So let's find out. It would be in our scenario book. Nope, this isn't the scenario book. So many books here. Oh, my dog definitely wants to play. I may have to pause for a bit. Sorry, I didn't mean to neglect you. Okay, so the oh, where are you? I know you're here. Nato Restriction. The cap flight must remain within 1 hex of the orbit point unless a Warsaw Pact flight has been detected and is in a hex on the NATO side of the front. So they're literally on the NATO front hex. So I would assume that that is considered both sides, right? So I would say that we're now free from this burden of being next to them. I don't know if that's, you know, I guess you could technically argue this isn't the NATO side, it's the neutral no man's land portion, but I'm going to go with it. I don't think that it's going to matter that much. I just want to get the game into some action here. So let's do this. So then it's our turn. Now, one thing about us is we also can go 5 if we go afterburner. But the big thing there is if we go to any mountains or whatever, we do not have the TFR. So we are going to have to make sure we climb a level because we're currently at the deck level. So I'm not sure how much we care that we're undetected or detected at the moment at the deck level. They're on our side, you know, so I would expect that they know that we're coming. So we may want to climb a little bit so we can get some more maneuverability and movement points. So a couple of things with that. If we do spend a fuel, we're going to move up to 5 points. That's true even if we go up altitude levels. We get to climb once for free as part of our movement. This is the part that I know for some of you this is like in your sleep stuff, but it's still very confusing to me. Okay, so when we on entering a hex, let me zoom it out a bit. We can do a free turn, or we can descend once. It costs a movement point to climb an altitude band, and then we can make a free turn. Or we can do what's called a zoom climb, but it costs 2 movement points. So that means we would be climbing twice. I don't know if it's necessary to do a zoom climb. Now, one of the reasons why I think it's important to climb is when you attack the enemy, if you're actually in higher altitude, you get some advantages. This LD means that there's no look down penalty. If it said LD LTD, it would mean we have a look down penalty only if the Russian is at deck. So the whole reason for being at deck is so you don't get picked up on the radar, so you remain undetected. Right now we're detected, so I'm not as concerned about us. It's more about detecting them. And then also, since they just hit the front line, I think that it's our duty to get as close to engagement as possible. Maybe that's a wrong tactic. I don't know. But let's play it out and see how that goes. So yes, I'm going to use a fuel point, which I don't have as much. So that's one thing to bear in mind. I'll use a fuel point. We'll move 5, and we're going to move from deck to low in one of those 5. So we're actually going to only move 4 hexes, but we're going to move up a level to do that. Now, how I've been keeping track of it is we actually have these little altitude markers over here. And so the F4, for example, has been at deck level, so I just move it to low. And that's how I've been keeping track. And another thing is when you're playing solitaire, obviously you would just use these markers directly and not use those other ones, but we're still trying it out. Okay, so if we come over to here, we are facing this way, and 1 movement point to go forward, and then let's see, we're moving 5 so we can turn 30 degrees. So we're going to move forward and turn 30 degrees. Okay, then we're going to climb, which also allows us to turn. So we'll go ahead and turn this way. That's for 2. And then this is 3, and then 4, and then 5. So that at least gets us closer to the Russians. We were finally able to leave the orbit point. Okay, beyond that, there's nothing more exciting to do. This is where they could do attacks if they wanted. So, for example, we could do a Bvr attack. We do have them visualized, so they are detected. So we could try to do a Bvr, and that's where this skyfish comes in. This is a radar homing missile, and if we wanted to do an attack, I think we're too far away. That's what I'm trying to get at, is I don't think we're in range yet, but it is So for the BVR, they have to be in our forward arc, which is what we sort of did. We got it so they're in our forward arc, but they still might be too far away. So only the attacker rolls. If the Bvr Combat commences, the attacker only rolls on a maneuver table to determine number of shots. And so here's where we have to look up our missile stats and make sure that we have the range. So let me make sure, because what I'm confused about is I'm looking at these numbers and I'm not sure which one's which. I think this 842 is what we're looking at here, but I need to verify. Okay, so this 3 is the rating of the weapon. I don't necessarily know what that means, but this 2 here is the Bvr rating, and then for the Bvr range, so this is a standard rating. This is a Bvr rating in the green, and then 8, 4, and 2. So the range is 8 in the forward arc, 4 in the beam, and 2 in the rear. And there's a chart that talks about the different arcs. We'd have to find it again. It's on one of these player aids. But they do have a visual on how to determine the arcs. We talked about that in the last video. Oh, here it is again. So that's a beam, right, off to the sides. That's the forward arc. And then these are the rear beams. And then I think the rear arc would be, they can't shoot there. So there's quite a nice range that they can use. But in terms of actual hex ranges, the best hex range is in the forward arc. Okay, so that's what this means, this 842. And that's for the Skyfish. The infrared, of course, has really poor range. It's just 111 for BVR. And then I would think that you would want to engage in just standard combat with that one. But like I said, I'd have to look a little deeper. As soon as I figured this out, I stopped. So let's do a real quick check. I'm pretty darn sure we're more than 8 hexes away. So this is going to be just an academic exercise. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, we're way over 8. But we're getting there. We're getting there. And that's the part. I'm getting excited to see something happen. So there's definitely a lot of moving parts with this game. So next thing we do is the fuel phase. And so both of them used one fuel. And what I did was I'm going to use poker chips to indicate that they used a fuel. So for my little sheet over here, I'm just putting one poker chip on the Russian and one on the American, or I'm sorry, the British. And I'm just going to keep track of fuel usage that way. It would probably be a little bit more thematic if I filled it up to 12 and then just took fuel away, but I'm too lazy. Okay. So next is SAM location. We skip the tracking phase. All NATO flights at deck and rough would become undetected. And then we both roll to determine whether we determine which other detected enemy flights, if any, become undetected. So now we're going to do a roll. So let's get out our detection chart. And we'll roll for the NATO flight first. And you can see I rolled an 8. And so for the 8, with a detection of A, the diamonds would have gone into undetected mode. And we were a spade anyway, so it didn't matter. So we remained detected. And then the Russian, that's a 14. and a 14 is no change. That's what this means. So they remain detected as well. So there's no loss of detection going on there. And then we move to SAM acquisition, which this is starting to get, I think, interesting. The SAM here has a range of 13. Okay, so it's an acquisition range of 13, and so I think we might be in range for that. So let's check. So first, quick reminder: the Russian is here, the SAM is here and here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's 10 away, and then this one here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So he's in range of both of these Hawk SAM sites. So let's try that out. This is a new portion of the game. All right. So the SAM detection, or the SAM table, if you will. Oy, oy, oy. Where are you? I'm having a bear of a time finding it. Here we go. Okay. So first of all, we have the SAM data table, which this data table really just says the same thing that the card does. So for example, we have the Hawk C, and basically it has 12 ammo. It can lock on after launch. It has that ability. Its acquiring range is 13, but its attack range is 9. So we're not going to be able to attack, at least not with the one on the south. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, and then the other one's 10. So neither of them are going to be able to attack because that attack range is 9. So how would I have known that? Here. Oh, right there. Right there's the range. So with a range of 9, he would have a really poor attack anyways. With him being at deck, it's a -3. It actually gets better for him if he's higher, which that part's interesting. But acquisition is possible within 13. So that's what we're going to do, is we got to figure out how to do acquisition. And so there is this SAM acquisition table. And we can try to even acquire undetected targets, which I do find interesting, but we're actually trying to target acquire a detected target, and it has not been acquired yet. And so what we're going to do is we're going to roll, and then we just use these modifiers. I mean, it's really that simple. So thank you, rules person, whoever made this. This was very easy to understand. So we rolled a 9, and this of course is for the northern one that is 10 spaces away. So we rolled a 9, and let's see what's going on. Is there target defensive jamming strength? So this is where the defensive jammer comes in. And they do have a 3D. So I don't know what the 3D means. So I got to look that up. Like, how do I apply the 3D to this? Because this isn't spot jamming. This is defensive jamming. I think it really just means 3. So this would be a -3 to that roll. So 9 minus 3 would become a 6. But let me check. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, if that Soviet unit is at deck level in mountain or rough terrain, the SAM can't acquire them. Now, in this case, I know it might be hard to see, but he's near the rough terrain, but he's actually flying over non-rough terrain at the moment, which probably was just a mistake on my part. But basically, we can try to lock him. And so yes, we rolled a 9, and this 3 here is what that modifier is. The D just means it's a defensive jammer. So it doesn't like have any special indication for this. So so that 9 then becomes a 6 here. There is no standoff or spot jamming. The target is on deck, so that becomes a 4. And then EO tracking. Ooh. Let me look that up. So EO tracking, first of all, it only applies on SAMs that actually have EO tracking capability. And it would only apply if they were within 4 or fewer hexes. So, yeah, there's nothing here with that. It's not a lock-on after launch situation either, because we haven't launched anything. The Soviets did not do an anti-radar tactic, which is something you do during the movement phase, by the way. And then quick acquisition is if it's detected only. I don't believe that applies either. They can only require 1 target at a time. It must be within acquisition range, and it must not be masked by terrain. That's the terrain thing we talked about. If the SAM radar is switched off and you try to turn it on, like right now, that's what quick acquisition is, and you would get a penalty because of that. That's not the case. And there's no chaff corridor either. So what did I say? It went down to a 4. So even at a 4, with the target detected, it's a partial acquisition. So we would put this little marker on the Soviet. It's a partial acquisition. Now, very important thing that I picked up in my reading here is as long as we fly at deck level into the rough or mountain terrain, we can make that acquisition go away. Like it just immediately goes away. It's called terrain masking. If you enter a rough or mountain hex at deck altitude, the acquisition marker is removed. So then they would have to start all over. So this turned out to probably be just a big academic exercise, but still, that's part of this game. And of course, I had to pause several times because the rules were new to me. Okay, so with that phase being over, we go to the admin phase, and we're not switching any SAMs or radars off. We already rolled to see if they would lose their detection. This is where we would generate any dummy counters. We can't do that. And that's it. That's the end of the turn. So I'm just going to roll right into the next turn. We're at 27 minutes. So a half hour for one turn in most games is not a bad deal. And what's funny is this game right now, if I knew the rules really well, we could probably do each turn in like 5 or 10 minutes. So thank you for those of you who endure watching this. But yeah, let's just jump right in and let's start the next turn. So let's roll for the random event. I got a 6. And of course I got to figure out which one the random events are on. 6. SAM fratricide. I've never heard that word before in my life. Roll 1d10 again. I rolled a 2. It's the Warsaw Pact. That player selects one enemy SAM and one detected enemy flight within attack range of that SAM. If the SAM's radar is off, turn it on. The SAM makes a non-salvo shot attempt against the selected flight. The shot is resolved as if the SAM has partial acquisition. Oh, I wonder if this is one of the ones we ignore. That's a nasty one. That would mean the SAM basically made a mistake, right? So here we go. Ignore the following random events. NATO QRA, NATO Flight in Trouble, WP QRA, WP Flight in Trouble, Man-Pad Ambush, and Siege Strike. That is not one of them. The shot resolved as if the SAM has partial acquisition. If a possible hit occurs, resolve the SAM attack on the SAM defense table with no modifiers. If no enemy SAM is eligible to attack, there's no effect. So we rolled the Warsaw Pact, which means that it's actually going to be the British that are going to have the issue. NATO is going to basically the SAM is going to attack NATO. And what's interesting, the rules of engagement is that NATO may not attack the Warsaw Pact flight in any way, but it doesn't say anything about them not being able to attack themselves. So I think we actually have to see if we get attacked ourselves, and this would be a quick mission if we get shot down. Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is like a Discovery Channel episode of When SAMs Attack. So SAMs may only fire at flights during the movement phase, but with this it says it happens right now. Non-salvo shot attempt against the selected flight. All right, yeah, so it's so this particular player aid is the SAM player aid. And so what you see here is we have a SAM attack. Now, which SAM is it going to be? I don't know if it matters, but we'll pick the one that's the closest. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's 5 spaces away. So he's very close. So, all right. So for the SAM attack, if I roll greater than a 12, it's a possible hit. And then we have to roll on the SAM defense. And then we get a SAM launch marker, which is something we're going to have to take into account. But so basically, let's roll, see what happens here. So I rolled a 2 and a 7. So that's a 9. I'm already less than 11, which would be a miss. So, but let's make sure. So the altitude modifier, plus or minus, that's this. So we said it's 5 away. So it would use this modifier here. And since we're at low altitude, it would get a +1. So that 9 becomes a 10. So that does make it worse. Is it long range per hex? No, because that's all part of the SAM data. This thing here, this little table, is this altitude modifier and that together. So that's why these little cards are pretty awesome. Is it a salvo fire? No, because remember the event said no, non-salvo fire. And is it an infrared SAM attack from forward hemisphere? I'm going to say no, because the forward hemisphere would be towards the front line, right? And we're actually behind it. So that's an interesting one. I don't know how to interpret that. But because it says -1 if it's from the forward, which seems to me like that would make it harder. Yeah. So right here, they're talking about there's like a radar arc. So NATO player has a Patriot SAM, phase array radar, and hex. During setup, the Patriot's 120-degree radar arc is defined here. The Patriot may only acquire and attack enemy flights inside this arc. That's for phased array radars. This is a... it doesn't mention anything about an arc. That's the thing. So we can look up here for the Hawk. Like, do they mention an arc? Yeah, so if you get a B here, this is a phased array. And you can see there's several B's up here, but the Hawks, which are these two rows, it's E and CE. Like the one below the Hawk here, the Patriot, is a B. So E is may acquire and attack helicopters, and then C is may conduct anti-radar SAM attacks. So, neither of those apply in this situation. So even with the 9 converted into a 10, we can safely say that it missed. So, phew, like that. However, that little SAM symbol, this symbol right here, does get placed on the plane. And I can't find the dang token, but I can assure you it goes on the plane. And then what's going to happen is like, this basically means it disrupted us. and we're going to have to spend a movement point to remove the marker during the movement phase. So I'm just going to grab a crew marker for now, but that's what that means, is we have to spend a movement point to get rid of that. Okay, so the random event actually turned into something this time. Then we do jamming, skip, detection. Everybody's detected right now, so there's nothing to do in the detection phase. Then we do the movement phase again. So let's roll. I rolled a 6 this time, which is the that's NATO. So NATO's going to let the Russian go first, because we want them to get closer. And the Russian drew a 2, so that means they are for sure going to go first. And you know what? I think we're going to just burn fuel to get in and out, right? I mean, that's what, to me, you should do in this case. Let's not piss around if we're in enemy territory. They're at deck level still, and we're going to make sure that they go over rough terrain to make sure they miss or they lose the acquisition. So we'll lose acquisition of them, and they're going to move 5 points. So let's go up here and see what they do. Okay, so they have to go here to the rally point, and then they're going to turn 30 degrees. So that's 1. Here's 2. And then here's 3, where they go over the rough terrain and lose the acquisition. So I'm going to take the acquisition off. And they're going to turn 30 degrees for 4. And then this is 5. And that would put them next to here for detection purposes. And so what they'll do is they're going to turn 30 degrees this way so they can fall into that up there for 6. Oh, hold on. Did I screw up? 1, turn, 2, 3, turn. Oh no, this is only 4. He was here. So he went 1, 2, 3, 4. He actually gets to go 1 more, 5, and then we're going to turn 30 degrees. So he's going to go right along the spine there. But once he does, he will be next to this artillery and be within range of visual detection. At least I'm pretty sure that is. I got to look that up instead of mentioning it all the time. So that is the Russian move, which it's really starting to heat up now. And yes, I'm correct. If you're within 1 hex of a ground unit, they do get visual identification. And within 4 of a non-disordered enemy flight, and also if you enter air-to-air combat, it's automatic. So that is that. So just a reminder, our victory conditions here is that we need to detect and visually identify the recon flight. I think that that's going to happen automatically. If he comes in to take his picture, we are going to visually identify him because he's going to be within 1 space of a ground unit. So no matter what, that's going to happen. Even if we, I mean, we have to detect him, of course, but the visual identification is going to do the deal. So this number 1 is going to happen, like even in order for the Russian to accomplish his objectives, we're going to automatically get number 1. Number 2, the full SAM acquisition is the bigger challenge. We had a partial, but we have to do it twice, and we haven't even done it once. So that's one of the things. Conduct a successful BVR, and I think that is going to be attempted this turn, so we're going to get to see that. So that'll be cool. And then a standard air-to-air combat engagement, which will occur later. And if we accomplish all 4 of those tasks, the NATO side wins. Otherwise, the Warsaw Pact wins. So I actually think this is really hard for the Warsaw Pact. And if you were playing as the Warsaw Pact, I think this would not be a very fun mission. But it is at least good, like if everybody's just learning the rules. Okay. they are finished. Now it is our turn. So first thing we need to do is we have to remove our marker. And if I can find the player aid, here it is. I'll show you. So remove markers is the first step. So you spend half of your movement points to remove a maneuver marker, 1 movement point to remove a Bvr avoid, 1 to remove SAM avoidance, and remove SAM avoid marker. So I will make sure, but I'm pretty sure we had a SAM avoidance marker we needed to put on. I thought it was the SAM launch thing, but that's not necessarily true. I will check real quick. Okay, so a couple of things. The first one is the this SAM launch right here. That token is used just to help you identify that your SAM actually did launch something. So for example, the northernmost hawk is now down to 11, and we would probably need to denote that because he actually is limited in how many he can fire. So he's down to 11. However, we don't have a marker on us, and here's why. Because we got a miss, and see how it says no effect? But if there was a possible hit, we'd have to roll on the SAM defense table. The SAM defense table is over here. So if we had to roll over here, then we would have gotten a SAM avoid marker, and that is what needs to be removed right now. So if we had to do SAM avoidance, that's when we'd have to do a SAM avoid marker. So long story short of it is there's nothing, there's no movement points we have to spend to remove that marker. And there's a whole drawn out process for this. So I know some of you guys write your comments really quick and then realize I corrected it later. This is probably another one of those moments, and I apologize if you spent all this time typing it up. But yes, I did figure it out. It just took me a little bit longer. Okay, so yeah, so sorry, I was getting into reading something about SAM friendly fire, but that doesn't apply here. So we do have to be careful we don't fly in front of the SAM. If we want the SAM to launch at the Russian plane, we have to be nowhere near the SAM. Like, we can't be within 4 spaces. Or otherwise there's a possibility the SAM will misfire and shoot at one of us. Like, the missile would, get confused. The good news about this scenario is we're really not supposed to fire the SAMs. We're just supposed to get acquisition, and that's it. So anyways, let's do our turn. Okay, we're at low level, and so we're going to move up to medium now. And that's still only 4 movement points, but if we burn a fuel, which we're going to do, that'll put us up to 5. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to spend 5 movement points, and let's close this gap, and let's get going here. So I'm going to add a fuel to both of them. I know that's a little bit ahead of time here, but we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're right over the SAM, 5. And the forward arc is right here, and we have this guy in forward arc, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4. He's 5 spaces away, and we are going to conduct a Bvr attack. So let's do it. See, I'm getting excited. This is, I think, what the game's all about, right? So here we go. Bvr Rules of Engagement. We'll go through it step by step. I actually don't think this is all that bad, but so attacker in defender's forward arc or forward rear, B marks, no shot if friendly fight within 3 hexes of target. Attacker, blah, blah, blah. So it's basically saying you can't shoot if there's friendlies nearby. We don't have to worry about that. There's only 1 token on the map. And yeah, it's two planes, but they're considered together. They don't create that problem. So we're going to do an air-to-air combat sequence. So first thing we do is only the attacker rolls on the engagement table. If successful, we go to step B. So the engagement table, I believe, is this up here. Okay, so let me put this down. So the condition is daytime and they're detected, and so we need to roll a 9 to be able to engage. If the roll is greater than equal to the engagement value, then let's do that. So they are detected, and we rolled a 16. So we're way above the 9. I think we're going to be able to do this, but let's see. Now, modifiers, plus aggression value. Remember the NATO aggression value was 1. Warsaw is 2. So our aggression value is a little bit lower, but we still get to add 1. That becomes 17. Is the target in a different altitude band? Yes. So that 17 now becomes a 16. There's no disordered flights. We're not making a slash attack. We're not in the rear hemisphere. We're not in haze or mist, and there's no moon conditions. So the rear hemisphere thing, that's weird, because the higher number is actually better, isn't it? So anyways, the Bvr engagement requirements are listed here. The defender has to be detected, check. Has to be in range of an undepleted Bvr weapon, check. The range is 8. Infrared Bvr weapon has line of sight. This is not infrared, it's radar. That's what the RHM stands for, and our range is 8. And this +2, I think actually, well, we'll just keep going here. Bvr ROE must allow engagement. Rules of engagement, right? So yes, we are allowed to engage, but it's like a fake engagement. Like we're just going through the steps, but we're not actually shooting anybody down. Look down must not apply, which it doesn't. We got the LD. Attacker not in the defensive wheel, we're not. Attacker has defender in forward arc, we do. Which this part is a little bit bunk because it says we can do, even if they're in a different beam, we have a beam value. So this whole forward arc thing, I don't understand. The attacker is not as disordered or have SAM avoid this turn, which luckily is not true. So for the engagement results, so we got a, this is not for Bvr, I don't think. This is for like when they're doing air-to-air here. So we're going to skip that. So let's move down to this. So we did engagement. That passed. So now we're going to move to step B. And by the way, this is something we can do every movement. So remember I moved 5 spaces and said now we're going to attack? I could have attempted Bvr the first move, and then again the second move, and then again the third move. So this is something you can do over and over again. And I misrepresented that when I moved 5 spaces and said, okay, now let's attack. Anyways, my apologies there. I think that's actually an annoying feature of this game that you do that. Because having to stop and check this all the time, every single movement you do it's a little annoying. Maybe it's thematic and realistic, but from a gameplay perspective, I don't necessarily find that fun. Anyways. So, if Bvr Combat commences, which it does, the attacker only rolls on the maneuver table to determine number of shots. And then Soviet doctrine will not apply because that only applies if the Soviets are the attacker. If there's no shots, we're skipping to G. Okay, so the maneuver table is over here on the right. And basically we roll in this table and we use the 1 column if it's a defensive wheel, but we're not. Or if we're making multiple attacks, then we would use the 1 column, and that's not the case either. So here's the dice rolls. And then the number of aircraft is 2. Remember, because there's 2 aircraft in our flight. So, and then this is the Bvr outcome. So this is for regular engagement. This is for BVR. So we're not going to use these dice. We're using these dice. And then these numbers that you see here are the number of shot opportunities. So let's roll. So there I rolled a 12. And there are some modifiers here. So we're going to look at the Bvr Combat modifier over here. But as it stands, right now, a 12 would be one hit. Because we have 2 aircraft, we would get one hit, or one shot opportunity, which does not necessarily mean a hit. Okay, so let's move over. And okay, so there's a couple of things. There's the flight maneuver rating modifiers here, which I think applies no matter what. And then this, of course, is for standard air-to-air, which we're skipping. And then there's the Bvr Combat modifier at the bottom, which is all of this. So I'm going to check to see if we have to use this top part. I think we do. 1 second. Okay, so for Bvr Combat, it says only use these modifiers, so we ignore all this, the flight maneuver rating and stuff like that. So that's fine. So Bvr Combat Maneuver Table modifier. We rolled a 12 so far. So let's see what happens. Per altitude band difference between attacker and defender, it is now 1. Right? Nope, we moved up to medium, so that actually is 2. Because they're still at deck. So we get a -2, so that 12 becomes a 10. That's not good. If the defender is at low altitude, -2 if they're at deck. So they get a -2 again. So that 10 now becomes an 8. Defender attack from rear, from beam. Defenders attack from the forward arc. So now we get to add +2, so that becomes a 10 again. And then the attacking flight's aggression value, which is 1, so that becomes an 11. So we saved ourselves here, because the band range is 10 to 12. So we started with a 12, we finished with an 11, it's still one shot. So that part's good. So then we would do shot resolution. Select an undepleted weapon to shoot with, then roll 2 dice, apply modifiers, and consult the table below. Well, the weapon, of course, is the RHM here, which is the Skyfish. Okay, so this is where I think this +2 is going to come into play, and maybe even that, but I think it's just this +2. I think this is for standard. So shots are resolved in any order as determined by the players. A shot may be refused based on the results of an earlier shot. Okay, fine. So let's roll some dice. So this is a 6 and a 6, so we got a 12 again. And sorry, I'm zoomed in so much you don't even see the dice. But we have a 12 again, which is no effect at the moment. But right here, plus combat value of selected weapon. So the selected weapon combat value, I believe, is +2. So that 12 becomes a 14. And let's verify and make sure that I'm not smoking pot on this one. So if we go back to the original sheet before we got those charts, you can see the Skyfish has a Bvr rating of 2, but it doesn't say that that's combat value. But that's what I think it means. So with that being said, we got to go to 11.33. Based on the weapon's air-to-air combat rating, see ADCs. So air-to-air combat rating. I mean, it says air-to-air weapon chart. I don't know if that's a combat rating, though. Yeah, I would say it is. Because, I mean, look. Combat rating. I mean, it doesn't say the word combat, but right here. See, it says air-to-air weapon chart, and it says rating, right? So this is the BVR rating, and this is the standard rating. And the word combat is nowhere to be seen, but I'm assuming that that's what it means by combat rating. It's the only time that the weapons are even listed in this game. So the Skyfish has a +2. So that would mean 14. And whether or not the flight has one or more additional undepleted air-to-air weapons, shots are resolved in any order, allocate and apply damage. So, okay, we're at 14. And then it says +1 if the flight has one or more additional undepleted weapons, NA to BVR. So we ignore this for BVR. So a 14 is 1 aircraft damaged. And the Soviets are 2 aircraft as well, instead of just 1. They actually have their flight contains 2 aircraft. One of them would be damaged. Now, remember, in this scenario, nobody actually takes damage because there's no actual fire. We just sort of go for fun through the steps. But in this case, we would have damaged one of them, which I think is pretty good. I don't know. I have no idea. A damaged plane, I think, can still do their mission. They might not be able to fire ordnance or things like that if you damage them. That stuff we would have to look up, but they're not really damaged, so they're still going through their motions. But I would say that that's a successful BVR. So the only mistake really there is that every single step that he moved, because like he's within 5 hexes right now, when he was 6 hexes away, even 7 hexes away, he could have tried to do a BVR engagement each time. So you're blowing off your missiles when you do that, but and I don't know how many he has. Like that's the one thing. Like how many of these does he have? And maybe that's what. No. Yeah. So that would be the question. Is all right. They have those missiles. That's great, but you know what? It's not a number. That's right. They have to do a missile depletion check. That's right. This game doesn't actually give you an actual number. It has like this depletion thing. So let's do that next. Well, let's go back to the BVR right here. It actually says right here. So we took a shot, and then the next step right here is depletion. Check for Bvr Weapon Depletion, which is 11.34. Modify roll by -1 per shot taken after the first. Only the Bvr weapon used may deplete, which that would make sense. So let's roll. And I rolled a 14, which might not be good because the high numbers seem to always trigger something in this game. And I dropped stuff on the floor. So after all shots in the combat have been resolved, roll 1 die. Oh, it's 1 die for each flight that resolved a shot. Roll per flight that took a shot, not per shot taken. If a flight resolved multiple shots, subtract 1 from the roll for each shot after the first. Well, we only took 1 shot, so that's a 7. Look up the depletion number of the chosen weapon. If the result is equal to or less than the depletion number, that weapon is depleted and no longer be used. Okay, so obviously you can refuel and rearm if that's what you need to do. If the modified result is 1 or less, a second weapon is also depleted, but that's not the case for BVR. Only the Bvr weapon can be depleted. No other weapon is depleted, even if you get a 1. Well, there was only 1 shot, so we don't have to worry about the second or third or anything like that. Okay, so how do I... Oh, that was not good. I gotta pause. Okay, I spilled components all over the floor, so that's cleaned up. And then I use that pause time to verify that, yes, this little bracket here, that is the depletion number. So if you ever roll less than that number, then that means you're depleted. And so you don't actually have like a certain number of missiles, you just have a depletion number, which is an interesting concept. But basically, we rolled a 7, which is way higher than the 3, so we didn't deplete anything. Now, the good news about this is we don't need to do BVR anymore. The mission, that part of the mission is complete. So we conducted a successful BVR right here, and so we conducted a successful BVR, and just making sure we okay. Resolve it if it was normal air-to-air. Nope. Resolve it as if it were a normal BVR, but the NATO player may not fire any shots. So the part where we actually fired the shots, that didn't count, but it was still fun to go through and see how it would have played out. Okay, so fuel phase. I already gave everybody their fuel. There was no air-to-air combat. No SAM location. The track phase, we need to see if anybody becomes undetected. So let's get out the detection chart. So for the NATO, we roll a 9, which is they remain detected. And then for the Russians, we rolled a 5. That might actually help them. So with the 5, the diamond becomes undetected. Now this part is interesting because I didn't spend a lot of time finding tokens, right? So, for example, Pravlik is a heart, but that's not the token that's on the board because he hasn't been visually identified. So the one that's here is a diamond. So he does become undetected, like so. All right, so next is a SAM acquisition. So he is within 5 of a SAM site, and then he's within 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so just to give you a quick view, SAM site is right underneath our flight here. So he's 5 away from this one, and he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 away from that one. So he's in range for both of the SAMs. He's undetected now, but they can still acquire him, even partially. So we have to resolve that. And that's done with this SAM acquisition table. And yes, their jamming strength of -3 is going to apply to everything. So what else? He's on deck, so he's going to get to add a -5 to these rolls. -3 because of the defensive jamming, and then -2 because he's on deck. And I believe that's it. So we're just going to use this little chart, and we're going to roll for the closest one first. And we're within 5, so he's going to use this this table here. And since he's at deck, it's a 0 to the roll. So whatever we roll, that's what happens. So we rolled an 8. So an 8 minus 5 is 3. And that puts us here. Whoops. No, because the target's undetected. So he's safe. And then we're going to roll for the other one. And that's a 13, which does put us here. But there's a -5 at play. And also, we said he was 8 spaces away, and that's another -2. So he gets no acquisition, and he remains undetected. And then per the rules, a dummy flight would come out right now at the admin phase. So we would have a dummy flight that comes out for the Russians, and that brings us to the end of the turn. So we're going to start turn 5. Okay, I think I'm getting the hang of it. I really do. I mean, I know I'm still screwing up a couple of things from time to time, and I get confused on how to read some of these cards, and like what does the brackets mean and stuff like that. But I'm starting to get the hang of it. Like I think, like I can see why people really like this game. This scenario is a boring scenario. I think those of you who know this game really well probably agree. But at the same time, it's a necessary one, so I'm glad they put it in here, because having to manage all these other rules that we keep skipping would have killed me. So, you know, I'm starting to feel like I'm getting the hang of this, which is perfect, because now that means I'm ready for whatever's going to come next, right? And I do give GMT credit. I mean, a lot of their games have this kind of progression, which it annoys me because I'm an impatient person and I want to just play the epic scenario right away. But it's what you do when there's so many rules, which this game has. I still think I would like this to be a video game. I really do. Like, I wish it would take care of a lot of this stuff for me, and I still would love to know the strategies and the, you know, all that stuff. But like, if this was a turn-based video game, I would be so excited. I do love the feel of the cardboard and being at the table, but the video game part would have been nice. Anyways, when I rant like this, it's because I'm planning on ending my video, which I am. It's the start of the weekend here, so I may be able to get to a lot more throughout the weekend. But anyways, Red Storm, it was a big gamble on my part to pick this up. The theme, of course, is keeping me interested. If this was something that I'm not as excited about theme-wise, I probably would have dropped this by now. Just because of the amount of investment it takes to get into it. But I really do enjoy this. It's a very well-designed game. There's no arguing that. The million charts and million rules, it's hard to argue that it's an easy to get into game. But in terms of like thematic 1980s air-to-air combat scenarios, I can't think of any game that does this. I really can't. And I know you guys said this was the third in the series. Like there was a Vietnam one, and I don't even remember what the other. I think it was Israeli defense, which that would have been an interesting theme too, by the way. The Vietnam one I've been less interested in, but anyways, very, very cool. And so looking forward to this. I gotta take a break, and as always, thanks for watching and stay awesome.